the earth shift beneath you this week? It might have been this.
Tomé la decisión de que voy a ir a Miami.
He's coming to Miami. The crown prince of Major League Soccer, Lionel Messi, confirmed he's taking his talents to South Beach. Actually, enter Miami, CF, but really at the moment, Fort Lauderdale, where the team plays, while their new home stadium at Miami Freedom Park comes to fruition at some point. Ticket prices jumped for the games starting next month. South Florida's sports industry high-fived the possibilities of a soccer stardom, and that included Fort Lauderdale officials, who are also, right now, in a bit of a standoff with the team. Owners soccer superstar David Beckham and Miami billionaire businessman Jorge Mas have not paid more than $1 million in permitting fees or fulfilled a promise to build a public park at the Fort Lauderdale Stadium. So the city took back some of its parking. John Herbst is the city commissioner for that district that includes the stadium, who inherited the years-long dealings when he was elected last fall. And John Herbst is with us live today. So nice to see you, John. Thanks for being on the program.
Good morning. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So bring us up to date on this parking lot standoff, which happened actually before Lionel Messi said, "I'm coming to Miami." Have you heard now from fans or from constituents? What set that scene for us?
Surprisingly, I really haven't heard much from anybody on this. I expected to have, some outreach either from the team or at least, representatives, and we haven't heard much of anything yet. I've seen a little bit of commentary online, but most of that is focused on encouraging the team to get its stadium built down in Miami, because that's where most of the fan base comes from to begin with. So I think folks are excited to have that project move forward, so they'll not have to drive to Fort Lauderdale to come to the games.
And yet, here we are, and here comes the summer, and I mean, we've seen here in the newsroom that interest and participation have skyrocketed. Tickets that were less than $100 are now going for $600 and $700 for the matches. Just so we get all of our facts right and bring people up to speed, it's not the parking fees are paid up by the team. It's not the parking fees for the parking lot. It's actually permitting fees for the building that was permitted and built 3 years ago. Is that right?
That is correct. So, right, whenever you go to construct anything, you pull a permit, and when you pull a permit, you pay the fees for the permits that you're pulling at the time you get the permit. In this case, Miami Beckham never paid the fees up front, and they are still withholding payment on those fees several years later. It's a highly unusual situation. This has never happened that I'm aware of.
Did they say why? Is there a reason?
So what they are hoping for is that we will pay them the cost of demolition for the two existing buildings that were on the site when they took them over. And what they'd like to do is offset the cost of the demolition with some of the building permit fees. So basically, just get an offset for that, which is something that I've explained to them you can't do. The building permit fund is legally separated from our general fund dollars. You can't commingle those. So the two issues are really not connected. They're not related in any way. But in their mind, it's just two big pots of money.
How much was the demolition?
So they're claiming that the demolition was $6 million, but whether it was $6 million or any other amount is not really relevant, because the contract that they signed with us is called the Interim Comprehensive Agreement, spells out very clearly that all costs of demolition will be borne by Miami Beckham. There is no obligation on the part of the city to fund any of that. I'll remind you and your listeners that they're getting 40 acres of prime property around our airport for $1 a year, and they pay no property taxes on it. Unlike their deal in Miami, where they're paying rent and they're paying property taxes, they have a sweetheart deal in Fort Lauderdale, which doesn't require them to pay anything. And so now they're not only are they not paying anything, they're actually asking the city to pay them, which is clearly unrealistic. And again, the contract is very, very clear that the total obligation for the demolition of the old buildings and the construction of their new stadium is solely on Miami Beckham.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure, no. So they had conversations with a prior city manager asking the city to participate in some of those costs. But that's all those were. Those were conversations by an individual who has no authority to bind the city to anything. when you're dealing with government, the only thing that's a final action is when it goes to the elected officials for a vote. Up until that point, all it is a conversation. So they were in conversations, and those conversations never led to a conclusion.
Got it. So I just, for the record, we reached out to Jorge Mas. I was hoping that he might be able to join us, and maybe in the following Sundays he might. But it sounds like they were expecting sort of like a handshake deal. They were expecting to sort of rely on that going forward as things, because the timelines have all gotten kind of upended first by COVID and then various other things. And that's not unusual, frankly, if you watch sports industry and government deal with each other, for better or worse, right? That's how it's almost like abnormally normal.
Well, I would share a slightly different perspective. There is no such thing in a handshake deal when you're doing a 50-year lease. There's no handshake deals on a 50-year lease. There's no handshake deals when you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars. We have a signed contract. The signed contract embodies all the terms and conditions that they agreed to and that we agreed to. They had their lawyers, both in-house counsel and outside counsel. They were well represented. They're a very large and sophisticated organization. This is not a mom and pop shop. These are folks that deal with government all the time. And we had our attorneys looking at it. Everybody understood exactly what we were agreeing to it when we signed our contracts and when we voted on these. What they're simply trying to do is change the rules after the fact, which is unreasonable. You don't do that. You don't come back after you have a contract signed and you start doing work and you start spending money and say, we'd like to revisit the terms of the agreement that we've got with you. We want more. And so that's what we've been, kind of negotiating about. We were trying to find a mediated settlement that was reasonable for all sides, unfortunately. And I participated in that mediation, and we weren't able to get to terms that we could live with.
Let me ask you a question.
We did try. We had a 9-hour mediation session. We did our best, but we simply couldn't bridge the gap. It was just too large.
Okay. I'm curious if an entity has unpaid building permit fees, how did they build?
Well, they were under a very, very tight deadline to get the stadium constructed in order for them to meet the requirements of Major League Soccer to begin playing their next season. And so rather than wait for the full comprehensive agreement to be completed, they asked the city to put in an interim comprehensive agreement so that they could begin demolition of the two existing stadiums that were there and hasten the construction. So they moved forward with a lot of speed. They got their stadium done. It's a beautiful stadium, but they did not follow all the procedures that should have been followed in that process. And candidly, the city should have held them to a greater level of diligence during that process. But we allowed them to move forward, never expecting that they were not going to come back and pay their bills. I mean, we simply never anticipated that. We thought we had reliable partners, and we moved forward in that spirit of partnership and collaboration.
Is there any, are you expecting, let me ask you this way, are you expecting with Major League Soccer's undisputed largest star in the universe headed to this team, are you expecting any kind of public blowback, any kind of people asking you to soften up and let things play out a little differently, and maybe it will be a win-win for the team and the city and the fans?
Sure, I wouldn't be surprised. I think my response to that, though, is if they have, and I know the numbers that I've seen floating around are in the neighborhood of $200 million a year. So, my response is if you have $200 million a year to pay one player, I think you have $1.3 million to pay your bills to the city. That's giving you a stadium for free. We're giving them, again, 40 acres for $1 a year for 50 years. I mean, that's unheard of. They're paying, I believe, $4.5 million to the city of Miami for the land that they're going to get there. They're paying property taxes. They're giving $25 million to the city of Miami to construct parks. Miami's got a good deal. We don't.
John Herbst, I want people who might not know, not only are you a fairly new commissioner, but a very long time employee of the city of Fort Lauderdale as the auditor, which goes to a really hard line on the money stuff. So That's
Well,
good context.
That's my
for
background.
people.
Yes, my background is finance. So I've got 40 years of finance. I have an investment banking background. I'm a CPA. I practiced in public accounting. So yeah, my whole professional life has been spent in finance and accounting and in the investment worlds, and it's what I know. And that's a big part of why I think the commission has tasked me with leading the negotiations, because this is the area that I work in. I understand
Understood.
these deals. I participated in them, and I know that at the end of the day, there's a good deal for both the team and the city. And I've always approached collaboration with that in mind.
We are so appreciative of your time, John Herbst, Commissioner for Fort Lauderdale. Thanks so much for being on the program, and keep in touch on this.
Thank you. My pleasure. Enjoyed it. Look forward to watching it again.
Thanks.